Hi there, and welcome to the Skylight Books author reading series. If you'd like to learn more about us and our many upcoming author events, please visit skylightbooks.com, where you can browse our inventory, buy books, and join our Friends with Benefits Club. You can also follow us on Twitter, Tumblr, and Facebook. To speak to a real live bookseller like me, please call 323-660-1175. Thanks for your support, and enjoy.
Yeah, but what we're here for is Sarah Pinsker and her new book, Sooner or Later Everything Falls into the Sea. Sarah Pinsker's stories have won the Nebula and Sturgeon Awards and have been finalists for the Hugo, the Locust, and the U.G. Foster Memorial Award. Her first novel, Song for a New Day, will be published this fall. That's cool. She's also a singer-songwriter with 3 albums on independent labels, and a 4th she swears will be released someday soon. And Rebecca Roanhorse is a Nebula and Hugo Award-winning speculative fiction writer and the recipient of the 2018 Campbell Award for Best New Writer. Her short fiction has been a finalist for the Sturgeon, Locust, and World Fantasy Awards. Her novel Trail of Lightning was selected as an Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Library Journal, and NPR Best Books of 2018, among others. So please join me in welcoming Sarah and Rebecca.
Hi there.
Hello.
So what we're going to do, Rebecca's going to read, and she'll tell you what she's reading from, and I'll read, and then we're going to chat a little, and then we'll do questions, and then we'll sign stuff, and we're going to have fun. Thank you all for coming.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, everyone, for coming. And thank you especially to my friends in the audience. I used to live in L.A. A while ago, decade ago, and so there's a bunch of folks I haven't seen in a long time, and it's awesome to see your faces and have you out here supporting me, so thank you. So I guess I will start by reading. So I have a couple of things I'm going to read. I don't know if this is, anyway. I'm going to read some short fiction, and I'm going to read an excerpt from Trail of Lightning. So how many folks have read Trail of Lightning? Oh, you guys are awesome. Okay, that's a lot. So let me do that first. And so I'll do that, and then I'll just go into this, yeah? Okay. So there are some children in the audience, and it is a little rated R. This one for violence, that one for something else. So, just kind of go with the flow, if that's okay. So the premise of Trail of Lightning, for those who haven't read it, is it's a post-apocalyptic near future set on the Navajo reservation. And the world has sort of gone to hell in a handbasket because of climate apocalypse, and the only people that are doing pretty well are those within the walls of the reservation. They've built a wall to keep the riffraff out. But within that wall, the gods and the heroes and the monsters of Navajo traditional stories have risen up, and they stalk the land. And our protagonist, our hero, anti-hero, Maggie Husky, is a monster hunter. And she has been hired at the beginning of the book to find a missing girl. I follow the easy tracks, broken branches and grass shine, up the mountain for over an hour with no visual on my prey. I keep moving anyway, sure of my path. And for a moment, lost in the beauty of the waning sunlight and the steady rhythm of my breath, I forget I am here to kill something. The forest surrounds me, ponderosa and blue spruce spread across the high desert mountains, sheltering small badgers and mice and night birds. Pine trees scent the air, their fallen needles crunching softly under my feet. Insects drone happily in the cooling evening, buzzing near my ears, attracted to my sweat. There is a beauty here, a calmness that I savor. I will savor the bloodshed too, no doubt. But this balance between earth and animal and self feels right, feels true. The sun sets, the moon rises, and the night settles in thick around me. The trees become shadows, the creatures flee from night predators, and the insects fly away. My pleasure fades along with my daylight. I keep moving until the stench of corruption grows so strong it becomes overwhelming. Dread, like a dark intuition, builds in my stomach, telling me I must almost be there. I swallow my fear, my mouth dry and sour, and keep going. I run my hands across my weapons again, just to be sure. A flicker of light ahead on the path catches my eye and draws me closer. I hunch down and move in for a better look. A campfire flutters and shivers, casting haphazard flames against the trunks of tall trees. The fire tries its best to rise higher, but it's just a bunch of loose sticks thrown in a shallow dugout, quickly consumed and not up to the task. I circle south to come in somewhere downwind and east of the camp. I load my shotgun with shells full of corn pollen and obsidian shot, both sacred to the Dene. Ammo meant to take out the Yi Nagoshi and the Chidi and any of the other monsters that call Deneta home. If I'm wrong and this monster is of the more human variety, the ammo will work just fine on him too. A hole in the heart is a hole in the heart, no matter what makes it. I find a good spot, foliage providing me cover, but not breaking my sight line into the camp, and I brace the shotgun against my shoulder. I sight down the barrel. What I see turns my stomach. The monster looks like a man, but I know better. He lies stretched out over a blue sleeping bag under a makeshift lean-to, rough canvas tarp strung across two ponderosas with trading post twine. The bulk of his body hides the girl from view, but I can hear her, a low, whimpering mewing at his mouth as his mouth works at her neck, and she begs him to stop. He doesn't stop. Rage floods my body, turns my vision hazy as I fight a wave of memory. The remembered feel of a man's weight holding my own body down, blood thick and choking in my mouth as powerful fingers grip my skull and slam my head into the floor, a strong smell of wrongness in my nose. The memory shudders through me, makes my hands unsteady. I force myself to shake it off, remind myself that it's just a memory and it can't hurt me anymore. The monster that did that to me is dead. I killed him. I spare one last hope that Nazgane will come charging up the mountain, flaming lightning sword aloft to save the day. I even wait half a second to see if it'll happen, but nothing, just me, alone. I raise the shotgun, bracing it against my shoulder. I stick out a foot, eyes still focused in front of me. I step heavily on a fallen branch. The brake sends a loud snap into the otherwise silent night. I wait for him to move, to give me a clear shot. Zilch. Eyes still set on the monster's back, I reach down and pick up a rock. I throw it hard against a distant sumac. It smacks into the trunk with a loud thunk. I grip the shotgun, finger on the trigger. Still nothing, and the girl's cries get higher, more frantic. Screw it. I bang the butt of my shotgun on the tree I'm using for cover and yell, "Hey, over here!" He rears up, head jerking back and forth as he searches the night for me. The nearness to the fire has left him blind. I swallow down bile. His mouth is covered in red gore. He's been gnawing at her throat. The son of a bitch is eating her. I fire. The shot rips through his chest. He staggers but doesn't go down. Blood trickles, sparkling in the wet firelight, and then pours. I start counting down from 10. 10 seconds, and a human loses enough blood that he falls like a brick. I know he's only shaped like a human, but I hope the rule still stands. I stay alive for 10 seconds, and I win. He's big, broad-shouldered, and thick. No wonder he was able to carry the girl up the side of the mountain for miles. In the flickering light of the poor fire, I can't see much detail. Man-shaped, but with knotty lumps like oversized tumors protruding from his back, shoulders, and thighs. Arms that seem too long, that branch out from his trunk and drag the ground. Skin so translucent it almost glows. And now he's sporting a bloody hole in his chest. I pump and fire again, this time taking off a chunk of his shoulder. Flesh and other bits spatter down on the girl, who skitters backwards on all fours. The monster is still standing, and he roars at me like a wounded boar enraged. "Run!" I shout at the girl as I advance. 6, 5, 4, and he barely staggers with a hole in his heart and half his arm missing, and I know I'm in trouble. "Go down," I whisper. "Go down." That's Trail of Lightning. So it's a little bit violent. But that's sort of my litmus test. If you can get through that first 20 pages, then it's not so bad. And now I'm going to read a little bit from a short story. So this is New Sons. This is a new anthology that just came out, edited by Nisi Shawl, who just won a big fancy award last night at the Nebulas, actually. So she's awesome. And this is actually for sale in the bookstore, as is Trail of Lightning. So this is original speculative fiction by people of color. And when Nisi put out the call for this, she just said, send me the story you don't think you can sell anywhere else. Send me your weirdest, most out there, whatever story you think is too much. So that's what I did. So how many people are familiar with Deer Woman, the legend of Deer Woman? Oh, okay, good. Okay, there's a pug, so I just have to stop and like, hey, pug. Oh, just cute. I used to have a pug. My pug recently passed in December. Yeah, I know. Her name was Lucy, and she was an old lady. But I love pugs. So, oh, and then Happy, you had a pug, right? Okay, so we're pug people. Anyway, so the story of Deer Woman is a legend from some native nations, particularly I think in the central part of the country. And Deer Woman is a beautiful woman that often shows up at dances or social gatherings, and she wears a long skirt, and you can never see her feet because her feet are hooves, right? And she seduces away the kind of people that are open to seduction, right? So often the philanderers or those of low moral character. And in some stories, just men in general, and often kills them. And so actually Beth LaPense, who is a native scholar, she did a reimagining of Deer Woman anthology, and she asked a bunch of Native women to reimagine what Deer Woman could be like in different contexts. And that is out there. It's called Deer Woman in Anthology. It was very creative. So I had started this story with that in mind, and then I expanded it. So this is a little more of that story, okay? And this is called Harvest. Never fall in love with a deer woman. Deer women are wild and without reason. Their lips are soft as evensong. Their skin dark as the mysteries of a moonless forest. A deer woman will make you do terrible things for a chance to dip your fingers inside her, to have her taste linger on your tongue. You will weep before it is over, the cries of one who has no relatives, but you will do whatever she asks. Tansy, Tansy, my lover whispers my name. Is it time to harvest the hearts? The horror of her question is always fresh, always a shock. I suppose in the daylight hours, when she is not here, I am able to tell myself that it never happened, that her words are other than what I know them to be. As long as I don't look at what we keep in the old cooler on the fire escape, as long as I ignore her bloody breath. The hand she rests against my cheek is still damp and smells faintly of rot. The air clots my nose with a coppery sweetness that has become familiar. Her eyes meet mine, vast and luminous. They say that if you gaze into someone's eyes, you can see their soul, but my lover has no soul. Her eyes are mirrors, showing me only myself, and I turn away from what I see. I reach for her instead, my hands compelled by something primal. If desire were a thing made physical, it would be the curve of my lover's neck, the slope of her shoulders. It would taste like the salt of her skin. It would sound like the susurrus of her breath. So, of course, I say what I always say every time she asks me to kill for her. Yes. We only need a few more hearts now, she says. 2, 3. I've lost count. Are you counting? 3. Last week when she asked, it was 5. The 5th we harvested on a Monday night in the empty parking lot of a deserted travel stop off I-95. A blonde-haired clerk whose steps were heavy with minimum wage and payday loan debt. 4th was a gray-eyed mother of 2, the backbone of her family. She fought hard, a strong heart, a worthy sacrifice, something to break the best of her people. They were monsters, my lover says to me, and it does no good to have mercy on a monster. They will not have mercy on you. She tucks herself against my ribs and rests her head on my shoulder. The silver moonlight through the open window snags in her hair. The light of distant stars caresses her skin. She tilts her face up for a kiss. I lean in, eager, but she moves away, laughing. She rolls to her feet, drags at my hand. Let's go. And I go, stumbling out of bed, barefoot across peeling and cold plastic tiles, ignoring the residue of filth that sticks to my soles. I pull on my jeans and an old stained hoodie, grab the black leather roll of chef knives from the console by the door, hesitate at the feel of the leather in my hands, the blades of sharp steel unrevealed. And for a moment, I remember a life before I met my lover. Never fall in love with a deer woman. Deer women are cunning and can see the past and the future all at once. Their eyes are deep and still as well water, their legs as long and slender as the high aspens. A deer woman will make you do terrible things for a chance to stroke the back of her knees, to hear her whisper your name. She will promise you home. We did not meet in a chance encounter in a moonlit wood in the way of fairy tales. I did not chase her fleeing shadow through a dappled grove of ancient trees to the banks of an enchanted pool. I was not lured away, as is the way of hunters who have, on a solstice eve, somehow become the prey themselves. I met my lover in a bar on a weekend trip to Manhattan, an impetuous late train from my upstate culinary school down to the city, a solo escape from a mind-numbing week spent on gastronomy etiquette, spirit dulled by the proper way to sit at a table, the hand to use for the seafood fork, the ordering of stemware. I am lost in this world, drowning in a sea of their buttery sauces and unfamiliar histories, wishing for something known, something to remind me of home. I overhear a boy in class mention a food truck somewhere on the Lower East Side that serves oven bread and prune pastelitos. It feels like a sign. New York is big, noisy, a foreign place, but I am not afraid of it. It beckons, asking me to let go, to become someone else. I wander, looking fruitlessly for that truck, until I hear a deep drum, a high wailing through the open door of a corner bar. She is there, wearing white, a dress that leaves her brown shoulders bare, a skirt that gambols lovingly around her long legs to brush the floor. She dances the kind of dance that draws stares, the dance that reminds you of the whirl of the starry heavens, of places that exist far away from concrete canyons. She is graceful and undisciplined all at once, an invitation to question one's life's choices. When she stops, she falls into the high-backed chair next to me at the bar, laughing and flushed. She ignores the others, men and women, who crowd around her, offering to buy her a drink. She looks at me, and I make the mistake of looking back. We drink Saint Germain, her neat in a shot glass because she says it's like the shot of summer, straight to the vein. I take mine with gin and ice and lemon. We drink and then we dance until the night moves on without us, until the bartender calls last call, and laughing, dizzy, reckless, we share a nectar-tinged kiss. I should have known then, but in the way of new lust, all I could know was the slip of her hips and the flirt of her long fingers, the flavor of white flowers staining her lips. Now I understand, in the way of those doomed, that I was being seduced. But like all fools whose desires leave them dashed upon rocks or lost in a fairy's lair, knowledge comes too late for salvation. I never find that food truck that tasted like home. Yay! So that is actually a serial killer story. So if you want to know what happens, you can check it out. And then now I'm going to hand it over to Sarah.
Hi there. So I'm going to read from the original in the Narwhal, or in the collection, which is called the Narwhal. That's the original story. We've been at a convention all weekend, so my voice is kind of going, but I got this. If it squeaks, that's user error. 1 week after she was hired for what had to be her best odd jobs gig yet, a whale arrived at Lynette's door. So many things could go wrong answering odd jobs ads. Lynette had taken enough sketchy jobs that she'd learned how to protect herself. She arranged to meet Dahlia at a crowded hipster coffee shop with her best friend Paula hiding in plain sight in case the stranger turned out unbearably creepy. Paula enjoyed the subterfuge, positioning herself spy thriller style behind the Baltimore Sun, front page headline and blaring, "Stupendous supers save New York again." She'd bought an actual print newspaper just for the purpose. Dahlia hadn't set off any alarm bells. She arrived looking friendly and sad, fitting for the circumstances. A 50-ish white woman with an air of freelance life coach / yoga instructor. She'd laid out her plan to drive her recently deceased mother's car to her home in Sacramento, talking up the route highlights, which were the main selling points for Lynette, and the 8 days they'd have to make the drive. She'd pay for a hotel room for Lynette every night. When Lynette accepted the gig, Dahlia bought the one-way air ticket from Sacramento back to Baltimore on the spot to prove she was serious. A week later, at 9 a.m. sharp, Dahlia texted from the street, "Outside, not leaving car, surrounded by children, time to go." Lynette opened her front door to a double-parked whale. The neighborhood kids had been drawn across the street from the playground, but they weren't surrounding it so much as clumping a few feet in front, staring. Who wouldn't stare? The whale's blue-silver body looked like fiberglass. It seemed to have been built on a station wagon chassis, the tail arcing up off the wide back end. The only art cars she'd ever seen at festivals and fairs had looked like they were happier standing still than moving, but this one looked ready to dive into the road. One painted eye gazed back at her from above the passenger window. "Are you riding in that, Miss Lynette?" asked her neighbor's oldest, inching closer. He wore a T-shirt emblazoned with a photo of Astounding Man's perfect face and his slogan, "Another day, another city saved." "I guess I am," she said, trying to sound casual, then abandoning that idea. "All the way across the country." The kids looked suitably impressed. The interior resembled a station wagon interior. She'd half been expecting a rib cage. She tossed her bags into the back seat beside Dahlia's bags and boxes, then slid into the front. The dashboard had the usual buttons and dials and levers you'd expect someone's mother's station wagon to have, and then a whole bunch of mystery buttons. "If you don't know what it is, don't touch it," Dahlia said. "I have no clue what any of these do." Lynette was about to protest that she wasn't going to touch anything, but then she decided not to start a long drive on the defensive. "I've always liked whales," she said instead. "You didn't say the car was a whale. This is awesome." "We should get moving. We've got a tight schedule to keep if I'm going to be back at work on Tuesday." Lynette didn't know how to respond to that either, so she stayed silent as Dahlia pulled away from the curb. The kids followed. Their wonder reminded Lynette of when the circus used to parade their animals down Lombard from the arena to the train yards on their way out of Baltimore. She and her friends would be playing on the stoop, and suddenly an elephant would come into view. It had always been unexpected and magical. The circus didn't come anymore. Like her, none of these kids had been anywhere. The farthest she'd ever traveled was to D.C. on one class trip to the Capitol. On that trip, she'd bought a commemorative coin, which she still kept in her pocket, a lucky charm, and promised herself that she'd someday be the kind of person who collected spoons or coins or magnets to show all the great places she'd been. People in movies were always heading out on epic road trips, but they seemed to have more money and time than she did, not to mention cars. This whole trip, with its benefactor, its employment factor, was as much of a miracle as a whale appearing at her door or an elephant walking west on Lombard. The junkie teenagers panhandling on the corner of MLK missed a whole light cycle watching them idle at the red. As the whale merged onto the highway, other cars honked and waved. A strange celebrity. It would get old if cars honked at them for 3,000 miles, but for a little while it would be fun. "Does this always happen?" she asked. Dahlia looked over, giving her full attention to Lynette, even as the whale plunged forward. "No clue. This is the first time I've ever driven this thing." "Oh, you said it was your mother's. I figured you grew up with it." Dahlia laughed. "It's a funny picture, isn't it? My mother running her errands in this. I don't know if I would have been proud or mortified." "Watch the road, please," Lynette didn't say. As far as I knew, she drove a maroon Camry, but she left that to charity. This is the one thing she left me in her will. She said, "I don't have money and you don't need money, so I thought I'd give you the only thing I ever made that mattered." I figured I'd take it home with me and then figure out why she gave it to me and what to do with it. Dahlia returned her attention to the road, and Lynette made a mental note not to ask any more questions until they reached a straightaway. She busied herself downloading an app that showed all the tourist highlights along the route, setting up notifications for everything she hoped to see. 10 miles before they reached the spot where her app told her the Appalachian Trail footbridge crossed over the highway, Lynette asked Dahlia if they could pull over to take a picture with the marker. "It's just a sign." Dahlia picked a hair off her sweater, lowered her window a few inches, and flicked it out. "But a cool sign. I've always wanted to hike the trail," Lynette said. "People walk it, and it's almost as far as we're going to be driving, and even the drive takes a week. I'd love to document that I made it this far. 20 seconds, that's all." Dahlia again shifted her entire body around in the driver's seat to address Lynette. "I'd really rather not stop this early, since I don't want to drive this car after dark. I have no idea how well it's been maintained, and I don't feel like getting stranded. Let's just get to Ohio today, and then we can talk about places to stop." I-70 banked and climbed, and the car juddered as two wheels met the shoulder. Lynette, watching the road from the passenger seat while the driver watched her, gave up. "Sorry, never mind." She tried to take a picture with her phone as they passed, but it came out blurry. In that moment, Lynette started thinking of Dahlia as boss instead of her name, to remind herself that this woman was paying her to help with the drive, not sightsee. Lynette didn't have a vote. They weren't friends. Maybe Dahlia'd be less tense once they were farther along. But no, even when Lynette drove, the boss's schedule ruled. She knew exactly where and when she wanted to stop for meals and sleep. She left a little leeway for bathrooms, but not much. Over the next 2 days, they zoomed past Falling Water, a giant coffee pot, the John and Annie Glenn House, and dozens of assorted parks and museums. Lynette spotted Vandalia's water tower from the highway, but not the Kaskaskia dragon somewhere below it, waiting for her to drop a coin in the slot and make it breathe fire. On the first night at a roadside motel in Ohio, eating takeout burger and fries on her bed, Lynette had still held out a little hope. She'd taken tourist brochures from the lobby and spread them in front of her, mapping them on her phone as she ate. Nothing within walking distance. The boss would never let her use the car to go sightseeing, and no place would be open by nightfall in any case. Anything Lynette wanted to see, she had to see through the car window. Maybe it had been her own fault for assuming see the country meant stop along the way through the country, and not to watch it all stream by the windows. Maybe it was her fault for not questioning why someone wouldn't have a friend willing to make the journey with her. She knew all the things she'd clarify if she were ever offered this opportunity again. "There's got to be something you want to stop for," Lynette said as they passed signs for the Model T Museum. She was behind the wheel, but she knew better than to pull over. A waterfall, a tourist trap, the Grand Canyon, a big hole in the ground. Something else, then? It's not a tourist thing. What? This was the first time Dahlia had mentioned interest in anything at all. Lynette tried not to get her hopes up. Dahlia pulled a photo out of her purse, then replaced it before Lynette could see it. "This was in my mother's top drawer. It says Baleful on the back, and I found a town called Baleful along this highway. I wanted to drive through and see if the movie theater in the pictures is actually there." "Drive through? You don't even want to stop then?" "If we're on schedule, we'll reach there halfway through the day. It'll be too early to stop." Of course. At least driving the whale was fun. It was bigger and heavier than anything she'd driven before, like it wanted you to feel like you had earned that lane change. And then the tail caught wind, and it created a rudder effect. It would be hell to park in a city, but out on the road it just took muscle and spatial awareness. She liked the driving, the rest frustrated her. The tight timeline, the rigidity. The only small rebellion Lynette found was in pressing random buttons and turning mystery dials. Dahlia had made it clear that neither of them should touch anything before they knew what it did, but Lynette found it easy enough to reach for the radio and knock something else instead. She tried to figure out some of the extra features before she tried them. It was a puzzle that killed time. The one with the pig icon opened a panel of ham radio controls, though she didn't get enough time with them to see how to use them before Dahlia closed the panel again. The redundant defrost icon on the ARM console activated a radar jammer. Aren't those totally illegal? Maybe you shouldn't turn it on then. She always apologized immediately after. By now, Dahlia probably thought she was completely incompetent, pawing at random buttons instead of asking for what she needed. She took comfort in that deception. "Would you be more careful?" Dahlia asked after she flipped a switch that made the entire car squeal like an abused megaphone, spooking the horses in the adjacent fields. Lynette tried to change the subject. "Did your mother do all this herself?" "I have no idea. I told you, I didn't even know this car existed. I wouldn't have said she was the kind of person to drive a whale around town, and I wouldn't have said she was the kind of person to modify a car with secret buttons to deafen the passengers. She had an engineering degree, so I guess she could have done it. She always said it was impossible for a woman to get an engineering job back then, so she engineered me instead. She was just a normal mother. We didn't get along well. She always pushed me to do more with my life, like, if you're going to be a lawyer, can you at least be a lawyer for good, not evil? But a car like this doesn't fit at all. I guess she had a secret artistic side. Are you an evil lawyer? Not from my perspective, Dahlia said, without elaborating or inviting follow-up. At least that explained how she had the money to pay Lynette and fly her home. What do you do, Lynette? This? You drive like a rideshare? No, you need a car to do that, Lynette said. I do odd jobs. That's enough to make a living? It's enough for me to cover my bills and pay my parents some rent. I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do. She tried not to get defensive. You're what, 23? You've got time to figure it out. Definitely time to change the subject. Can we stop for dinner soon? The boss sighed. I'd like to get a little farther west first. Granola bar to tide you over? Lynette reached for her fast-emptying snack bag. After this trip, she planned never to eat another granola bar again. As the boss opened and closed her window for the 221st time, Lynette looked around for a button that would blow out the window once and for all. Sure, they'd be stuck with highway noise and wind for another 1,500 miles, but at least Lynette's ears would stop popping. She thought she'd been a gracious companion. She listened to music in earbuds. She tolerated the relentless schedule, the ridiculous refusal to take any joy from the trip. Still, it was hard to keep the little irritations from magnifying. Why do you keep opening and closing the window? I don't, said the boss, turning her attention away from the road. She did that a lot, too, turning her whole attention to Lynette whenever either of them spoke, no matter the traffic or the road condition, so that Lynette had mostly stopped talking altogether. She'd picked a 2-lane straightaway to ask this time, no cars ahead or behind, but she still dug her nails into her seat and watched the road as if she'd have any control in the passenger seat. Never mind, I must have imagined it. There was no point in arguing. How do you convince someone they're doing something when it's clearly so habitual they don't even know they're doing it? You don't. You mind your own business, concentrate on the road or the view, and maybe you start keeping track on your phone, sending text updates to your best friend 1,500 miles of open-close behind. The return text, which Lynette casually shielded from Dahlia's wandering gaze, read, "OMG, how can you stand it?" followed by a silent scream emoji. The window opened and closed again. Lynette felt an unbearable need to do something. She reached over and jabbed a button they hadn't hit before. It lit up. The whale surged forward. What did you do? I don't know. Lynette hit the button again, but the light didn't turn off. Dahlia gave her a panicked look. The pedals aren't responding. The speedometer edged up to 80, 90. They approached a semi, and Lynette braced for impact, but the whale swerved around it. I didn't do that. The car did. What the hell did you press? Lynette looked at the button. It's a flower. I told you not to press anything. Can you pull the emergency brake? Not at 90 miles an hour. What about calling the cops so that if they clock us, they know we're having technical difficulties? Officers, please come catch me speeding. Runaway truck ramp? Those are only in the mountains. They both sat silently for a minute. Lynette resisted the overwhelming urge to apologize. If Dahlia hadn't been so annoying, she wouldn't have hit the flowery button of doom. At least we'll make good time? This isn't funny. Lynette kind of thought it was funny as long as they didn't die. The car was even more deadline-oriented than the boss. She reached into her pocket and wrapped her fingers around her lucky coin. The miles ticked away. After a while, Dahlia started fiddling with her phone. Lynette wondered what would happen if they passed a cop while the driver checked her phone with no hand steering. She pictured a chase, cops lobbing harpoons out their windows, tossing nets at them, shouting, "There she blows!" She had to admit she felt safer than when Dahlia was in control and took her attention off the road. I'm going to stop there. So
Awesome. Yeah. So I think we had a few questions for each other, perhaps, and just to chit chat a little bit, and then we will see if you guys have any questions. So Sarah,
Rebecca.
I know this is a collection of short stories. So tell me a little bit about, the process of how this came to be and why you put this together, and tell me why you came up with that title.
So I have about 50 short stories out in the world, and Small Beer Press, who put this out, is my favorite small press in the entire world. They're amazing, and when they have a table at a convention or a conference or a festival or whatever, I buy everything that's on their table. So the fact that they wanted a collection from me is pretty much the coolest thing ever, and I didn't actually ever think of anything farther than that. Like the culmination in my head, like from when I was a teenager, of what would be the coolest thing ever was a short story collection, and then I was like, well, Small Beer would be cool. It's my favorite, and then it happened. So that's the short answer. And then with 50 stories out and room for about 12 or 13, and there's this more difficult thing of choosing which ones belong, because they're all your babies. And there are a few you can toss out because you can say, oh, I've grown past that one a little bit, or that one doesn't feel like it is part of this. But I'm a nerd, so part of what I did was I made a spreadsheet, and I put all my stories in it, and then I color coded it. So I put them all in there with like whether it's what perspective it's in, first or third or whatever, and whether it was science fiction or fantasy or near future or something else entirely. And I did age of the character. I did sort of whether it has an upward swing or a downward swing. I did all these things, how long it was, what magazine it was published in. I put that all in, and then I gave them all blocks of color, and I tried not to match the blocks of color. So it was sort of like one of those dot games you play on a phone. And then I looked at whether it actually worked together and whether they felt thematically like something. Because the nice thing about Small Beer stuff is it always feels like it all belongs together. And then because I'm also a musician, I kind of went after it like a track list. And that means like, do these things fit together sort of as an emotional arc? Do they juxtapose too much? Is it fun to like immediately start abruptly after that? Are they in the same key? And so I put them all on recipe cards with the first paragraph, just a couple sentences, like the first couple of sentences and the last couple of sentences. And then I put them in the order that I thought was going to work because of the color coding, and then started tweaking stuff based on how the sentences flowed. And then Gavin told me where I was wrong, the editor, and told me some things that he thought didn't belong and some things that did belong. And then we had a big fight over one of the stories, and then I lost. And then, and actually that story, the narwhal, would not have existed if he hadn't said, we want a different original. So I wrote an original, and he said, not that one. And so I wrote another one, and I love this one. So I'm really glad that he pushed me to do that.
Where'd your title come from?
The title is one of the stories. It is the Sooner or Later Everything Falls into the Sea, which is a story about a near future where there's some little, like, I like to say, like, small apocalypse type stuff. Like it's not the end of the world, but some lousy stuff has happened, and the rich people have all like abandoned the land, and they've gone to live on luxury liners, and they've bought some islands, and they're like funding themselves, and they're all out there sort of living like it's the end of the world and partying it up, and just doing their rich person thing. And but there's still people on land, and I like seeing people, like I'm an optimist, and inherent goodness of that people will find ways to. So there are all these books out there in the world that do the downer thing that I loved Station 11, but Station 11 things are bad and get worse and worse and worse, and I like to think that people will help each other. And I guess that's true in Station 11 to some extent. I might have picked a bad example. But I like to think that people get together and help each other a little bit. So it's about two very, very different people, one of whom washes ashore from one of those ships, and one of whom was still on land.
Cool. I did notice in the story that you read, the narwhal story. I know you write mostly science fiction and fantasy. Is that correct? So was there a speculative element?
There is, but it's a sort of meandering story, so it comes a little later. There's some, I won't. I'm gonna leave it for people to discover.
Okay.
But yeah,
Fair
there is one. I think just about all the stories in here have a speculative element, but some of them are very small or weird elements.
Yeah, and I've actually started reading it. I haven't gotten all the way through it, but I noticed, like, particularly at the beginning, the first couple of stories, like thematically, and I sort of mentioned this to you, and you were like, "Really?"
Yeah.
They seem to be about people who are sort of in a fugue state, or who have entered, somehow have lost control of their lives because some other consciousness is pushing down on them or interfering in their lives.
And I didn't notice that at all, but I believe you because I'm very bad at detecting themes in my own stories.
Oh, okay.
So I think people tend to tell me there's a lot of memory stuff and a lot of what we take with us kind of questions, like what do you do when the world moves on around past the thing you love, or when you that sort of thing, and that may play into it, because it's people dealing with things that are coming externally at them often, and maybe dealing with them poorly. So that might be the thing you're after there.
Yeah,
But,
that's very interesting.
yeah, do you know that do you have people tell you themes that you didn't recognize until they say it?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, we'll see. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, the thing I was interested in, I love Trail of Lightning, but, and that's not a but, now I'm going to tell you something bad, because I hate when people do that. It was just sort of a continuation of a tired and meandering sentence. The one thing that I thought was really interesting is that it has the trappings of urban fantasy in terms of monsters and everything, but instead of setting it a lot of urban fantasy is present, is set in the present, and you went near future and also soft apocalypse. And I was curious what went into that decision, as a fellow lover of near future soft apocalypse.
Yeah, I guess, the motivation, so I read a lot of urban fantasy. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the genre, but it's usually, particularly the ones I like are sort of badass women at the center of the story, often fighting monsters, often having a love life that's all dramatic, and they're often vampires and werewolves and all that sort of stuff. And so I don't even care. I love it, and you can just judge me. But so I read a lot of that, and often you'll see there's a couple of series where the character is half native, but her nativeness only comes through shape-shifting or something that's not really integral to who she is. She's not in a native culture. She's not surrounded by the gods and heroes and all of that sort of stuff that would make her native. She's in a very Western vampires and werewolves sort of setting. And so I was like, well, I want to write my own story. But I'm going to set it in the setting that I know. And at the time I was living on the Navajo reservation and practicing Navajo law and everything. And Navajo law is based on these traditional stories. And so actually I was taught to them by a Navajo professor in law school. And so, so I was like, I want to create a world like that. But if I'm going to write a native story, I'm going to write it in the future, because natives are so often set in the past. I mean, it's usually the 1800s, and we're all dying. So I was like, no, this is going to be present to future, and I want us to be thriving. And I want, sort of all that sort of urban fantasy stuff along with it, but I want it to be something a little different. So we're going to build that wall, and it's going to lift up the land, as opposed to the sort of tragedy porn that so much native stuff is. So, yeah. Cool. Yeah, and then they're going to have some love life difficulties and, some hot guys, and that's what I wanted to write.
Do you want to talk about your new book at all? Because you read from Trail of Lightning, which a lot of people look like they had read, but you have a new novel out, too.
I do, and I would show it to you if I had it. But Storm of Locusts, which is the second book in the Sixth World series.
There's a copy.
Oh, yay. Okay. Yeah. Oh. By the way, this is my best friend Anna. We've known each other since we were 18. We went to college together. She knows all my secrets. Of course, so do those two in the back. So, anyway, so this is Storm of Locusts, and this is the second book after Trail of Lightning, and it just came out on the 23rd. And it's set in sort of the the same world. You still have the same protagonist, Maggie, but you have some new characters. This one and this one, and Trail of Lightning is set all within the confines of the Navajo Nation, which is Deneta. Storm of Locusts takes you outside the wall. So you get to see more of the post-apocalyptic world of northern Arizona and what has happened in the wake of, the climate apocalypse and going to hell in a handbasket. So you have, body harvesters, which is sort of, I feel like, this traditional thing you got to have when you're on an apocalyptic road trip. Haunted casinos, and a bad guy that's made of bugs. So, that's what this one is about. And I think it's a lot of fun. And, of course, Maggie, it's all about her, breaking out of both her physical and her metaphorical walls. So I think my theme, if I were going to find a theme, it's like traumatized women and like the soft boys who love them. So, and I'm writing a Star Wars, and which is awesome. But I was talking to one of the editors, and I was like, my Star Wars is going to be like traumatized women and the soft boys who love them. And she was like, I know. We knew who you were when we hired you. So awesome.
Very cool.
Yeah, thank you.
I think it's probably the theme thing is easier to talk about with novels than with books, or than with short stories. So I said that we've been at a convention all weekend. Like that means like 2 hours of sleep a night since Wednesday. So
yeah, we're both a little.
Yeah, we're a little ragged,
Patience.
but yeah. So when the wrong word comes out, that is because my mouth is going faster than my brain.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So how was our time? Does anyone know what time it is by chance? I gave my phone away.
I know. 4.
4.
Oh, let's take some
let's
questions.
do questions. Yeah, we were going to try to keep it to an hour because I know you guys don't want to stay here all day. So maybe questions for either one of us. Mm-hmm.
Something that I think you have in common, both of you, is your characters are struggling with community. You're in these soft apocalypses where people need community to survive, but they have problems with their community. And I see that in both of your books. If both of you could talk a little bit about that, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
That's fantastic. My friend Donna said that what we both have in common is that the people in our books, that one of the themes is community and people finding community. Did I get that right? Okay, good, because brain and mouth still. Okay, cool. And that actually leads in well. I have a novel coming out in September, which is based on but not including or immediately adjacent to my story, Our Lady of the Open Road, which is in here, which is a road novel about a band on the road. And that when I'm still struggling to find, like, you're supposed to do, like, have a couple of sentences to describe it well. But the best way that I have to describe it, and I often forget to do it this way, and I start talking about it like in all these different ways, is that it's about community and music as community and finding your people, like found family. So I've got like this musician who knew what life was like on the road, and she loved it. Like she had a band that she was traveling with, and that was the family that she had found, and then things changed in the world so that she isn't able to do that anymore. And there's also a character who has grown up after a somewhat soft apocalyptic thing, who has grown up in a world where there isn't. People have isolated themselves and are sort of doing even more online than we're already doing online, and have found ways to do that and completely isolate themselves. There's laws to keep them separate. Like you can't have a lovely gathering like this, and she, as far as she's concerned, that doesn't exist. It's not even something she's conceived of, and so I have those characters weaving together and the discovery of what family and community and music is. So that would be the theme, and thank you, close reader, for telling me what I cannot say about my own work.
And yeah, it definitely, I think in Trail of Lightning, Maggie starts and she's very isolated, right? And she's sort of an outcast, even though she is Navajo. The larger Navajo community does not accept her. They think she's the wrong kind of Navajo. And it's all about sort of her journey to self-acceptance in that first book, because she's a woman in sort of a dude world surrounded by all these men who are trying to tell her, what's wrong with her and all this sort of stuff. So she finds one, the soft boy who loves her, and sort of breaks through that. And then Storm of Locusts is about her finding community with her girl gang, right? So that's your post-apocalyptic girl gang road trip down Route 66, where she has to learn to be a friend and an auntie and, all of this sort of stuff. And the villain in that also struggles with community, right? And what it is to be accepted or not be accepted by the Native community. So, yeah.
Some people use community to control other people, and your characters are often fighting that, but that doesn't mean they give up on community.
Right, yeah. And often, actually, when I write, I try to write the protagonist and the antagonist as sort of like a person with the same problem, but a different approach to solving that problem. So that your hero or your protagonist, has, I guess, like the more successful approach in my mind, and then your antagonist, like Gideon in Storm of Locusts, has the same problem that Maggie has, but goes about solving it through starting a cult, right? As one does. Yeah. So yeah, agreed.
Cool. Any other questions?
Oh.
The question is whether we identify with the term hope punk, which, like the other punks, diesel punk and steampunk and solar punk, is envisioning. It's a combination of two words that have nothing to do with each other, but someone has defined an aesthetic or a feeling surrounding it, and in this case, stories that I think have an uplift is what hope punk would be. Like that, there's a rage, but there's a possibility of something better in the future. And I would say, I haven't decided if I can embrace the term, but I like the idea, and it probably could be put on my work.
Absolutely not. No, I'm just kidding. No. I mean, I don't know. No.
Hey.
It's all downhill in my work.
All right. Maybe one more if there is one, and otherwise we will assign some books for you.
What did you learn about yourself through the process of writing your respective works?
You want to go first?
What did we learn about ourselves in the process of writing our works? Short stories or novel, because they're very different things in my head. Short stories, I just love having. I don't know if this is a thing about myself. I love jumping to a new world and learning this whole new thing and figuring things out, and then finishing it and moving on to the next one, which you don't get to do in novels. You sit there and you move forward and forward and forward, and it's kind of like you're on a generation ship pushing forward, hoping someday to reach the promised place that will hopefully be welcoming to you and have at the end as a welcoming sign. That was a poor metaphor, but. But yeah, I guess what I've learned is I really do love writing short stories, and I really do tolerate writing novels. But I like the end result in both cases.
Yeah, and I like both in a different way. I actually wrote the novel first, and then I wrote the short story, Welcome to Your Authentic Indian Experience trademark, that won the Hugo and the Nebula, so I have to throw that in. And afterwards, in answer to a call, much like I wrote Harvest in answer to a call. And it's just really different. It's just a different process for me, and I like them both. Like often when the novel is just draining, it's cool to switch gears and write a short story, because for the short story, I go for like intimacy and emotional punch. And often my short stories have a sort of twist or an unreliable narrator. So hopefully at the end you're like, oh, That's really what I'm going for. Whereas the novels, I want you to just really get attached and immersive and, care about the characters long enough to follow them to the next book. Yeah, so what did I learn about myself? I can write.
I don't know if I answered that
both?
either. Yeah.
I don't know, right?
we kind of went right past that one, but thank you for asking it. So in the name, we did promise that we would get you all home in time for Game of Thrones, and I believe you also have a plane to catch.
Yeah, I have a plane to catch.
So we are going to sign some books for you and chat with you a little further.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming.
You've been listening to the Skylight Books author reading series. Don't forget, you can listen to this and all of our other great podcasts at skylightbooks.com. Thanks again for stopping by, and we hope to see you soon.